The way we understand Quran is sometimes we have to go to another surah, and I'll show you some verses from another surah, none other than Surah Al-Ahzab. Towards the last part of the surah, when this verse was revealed, by the way, Surah Al-Ahzab was revealed where? In Mecca or Medina? Medina. Ahzab means the unholy alliance. The Meccans, the disbelievers of Mecca, had joined forces with the Christians and the Jews. This time they were determined. They say to themselves and to the Christians and Jews, in this battle we will finish him. Astaghfirullah. As if Allah was not protecting him. So they formed this unholy alliance. It's a very interesting surah. Towards the last part of the surah, the end of the surah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu, la takunu kalladhina adaw Musa. O you who believe, do not be like those who spoke bad things of Musa. Those who ridiculed Musa alayhi salam. He was a great messenger. He was one of the Ulul Azm prophets. According to our traditions, as reported by these famous historians, and as written by our scholars, respected scholars, they say that after this verse was revealed, whenever the messenger gave a speech in public, he always began with this verse. Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu, la takunu kalladhina adaw Musa. Do not be like those who ridiculed Musa. Meaning, we have to be very careful not to ridicule one another. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the next verse says, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu. Notice, O you who believe, O you who believe, because these are the things that are not expected of us. If we don't know how to, if you find someone who is not speaking to another person properly, in a proper etiquette or proper manner, according to this verse in Surah Hujraat, it is a testimony that this person's iman is weak. Because Allah is saying, we will wash away his good deeds. Why? Because his iman is not there. Why does he call himself a believer? A true believer should have the etiquette of speaking, should have the etiquette of, even when we start arguing about our belief and the other person's belief, the way we argue, we have to be very, very careful. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala warns us in the Quran that when you have a debate with people of other schools of thought, have a debate in good exhortation and without attacking. You have to discuss and have a debate with due respect, because after all, we are not supposed to discriminate one another. Even if you come from a different school of thought, I don't have the authority to discriminate. I'll give you a good example. In Medina, after the masjid was built, Masjid al-Nabi, the Christian delegation came from Najran. And they came to see the Prophet ﷺ in the mosque. So when they were having a meeting, it was their prayer time. So the head of the delegation rang the bell, because the Christians, you know how they call for prayer? They ring the bell. So the companions of the Prophet came. He says, Ya Rasulullah, how do you allow such a thing? You know what the Prophet replied? He says, no. Allah has not instructed us to discriminate someone's faith. We are supposed to respect them, allow them to have their call of prayers, and allow them to conduct their own prayers in my masjid. Can you imagine that? And look at the way we deal with one another today. How we discriminate. Not only with other people of other religion, but within our own community. There is so much discrimination. So much. There's so much talk about this, but I don't have enough time. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala then continues by saying, there is no doubt that most of you call upon the Prophet from behind the private chambers, and they do not have understanding. In the 9th year after Hijrah, when the people from the outskirts of Medina came in such great numbers to meet the messenger and to embrace Islam, they came outside his house and they said, Ya Muhammad, ukhruj. They started yelling from outside his house. So this verse was revealed. Allah is saying that's not the way to call him. He is your honorable messenger and he deserves every kind of respect. Now notice another thing, brothers and sisters. We are talking about the honor and respect Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives to a messenger. There's a reason for that. Not only because he's a central figure in the religion of Islam. Not only because he brought the religion of Islam to the people. But also because he becomes our role model in emulating him and learning the science of ethics and morality and akhlaq from him. When the Prophet was asked one of the reasons why Allah sent him to mankind, he said very clearly, إِنَّمَا بُعِثْتُ لِأُتَمِّمَ مَقَارِمُ الْأَخْلَاقِ. I have not been sent except to perfect your moral character. As Allah introduces him in the Quran, وَإِنَّكَ لَعَلَىٰ خُلُقٍ عَظِيمٍ. You are of the sublime level of morality. We talked about this verse last time. So then he becomes our example for us to follow. Allah has given us practical examples. Allah is not one who can be seen and felt. He cannot come down to us in the form of a human being. That's not God. That's not the definition of God. But look how merciful Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is. He sends the messenger as our example, and after the messenger, he sends the 12 holy imams after him to continue this system of giving us examples. Salawat ala Muhammad wa ala. Let me quickly give you some points about how we should interact with one another by giving you the example of our messenger. Because after all, the best example is the messenger. لَقَدْ كَانَ لَكُمْ فِي رَسُولِ اللَّهِ أُسْوَةٌ حَسَنَةٌ لِمَنْ كَانَ يَرْجُو اللَّهَ وَالْيَوْمِ الْآخِرِ وَذَكَرَ اللَّهُ كَثِيرًا. Indeed, he is the best example for those who have the hope of meeting Allah and they strongly believe in the day of judgment. So, first, when we study the character of the Prophet, we realize that he was always the first in greeting other people. Always the first in greeting other people. He would make sure he is the first in greeting people. But when we go to a community, we are so shy and we want to stay away from the people. We don't want to be the first to come forward and say, Assalamu alaikum, shake hands. You know what, there's another thing that I just remembered. Whenever the Prophet went in public and when he saw young children, he first shook hands with the children. So some of the people were a little bit upset. They said, how come the Prophet is not shaking hands with the elders first and then the children? You know what the Prophet replied? He says, if we don't show this example to the children, when they grow up, they will not shake hands even with the elders, even with their own parents. So this is what the Prophet made sure. When he goes in public, how many of us, when we go in a community, when we go in an assembly, we see young children, how many of us leave the elders and go to the children and shake hands with them? You know what difference it makes? It makes a big difference when you see a child. When a child sees someone who is perhaps well known in the community, he leaves everyone and he comes to him to shake his hands. He feels good about himself. He says, wow, what a beautiful religion this is. I need to study more about this religion. I need to know more because this religion is teaching us nothing but good. Number two, if he wished to speak to a person while in the streets or in a gathering, he would not speak to them while looking out from the corner of his eyes. Very, very important. Even winking is not allowed in Islam. You know, sometimes when we talk to another person and we see a third person, we are trying to say something and I'm trying to relate to this person I'm talking to about that third person. So the way to do it, you know, what people do, they wink. According to Islam, it's bad akhlaq. It's not good. Because if that person saw you winking, he will feel offended and he would not like it. So we should never do that. So the Prophet